Listen, laugh, and learn with Sacha and Ish as they share their experiences, thoughts, and tips to build skills that are not so average and a career that's not so ordinary. This is the Not So Breakfast Show.
All right, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show today, the podcast for leadership and career development. And today we've got a banger because we're talking about technical stuff like epigenetics and human performance. And we've got the man to be talking about that. And I will get to Cam and introduce him in just a minute. But to get us started, Sacha, you wanted to talk about my missing shorts, and I have found the shorts. The mystery has been solved.
Where are the shorts, Ish?
They're in my daughter's drawer. So all of my shorts went missing, for those of you that didn't hear last week's episode, every single pair. And so I was going crazy thinking someone was breaking into the house and just stealing my shorts, or I had put them somewhere. But turns out that Emma had gone to a fancy dress party and decided to, I don't know, dress up as some sort of gangster basketball player and decided that my shorts were part of her costume. So that's where they are. So I didn't have to buy any more. So I am flippin' pleased about that, I can tell you now. But it's good to have you back from Sydney as well, Sash. You're back in New Zealand?
Yes, I'm back in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton. So that's Sydney twice in the last couple of weeks. And I like to think of myself as this international jet setter who just pops across the Tasman and then pops back, and it's all just easy peasy like getting on a bus. But I'm absolutely shattered from the last lot of travel around New Zealand and across the ditch. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about kind of optimal physical performance today, because I suspect that in these last few weeks I've been doing it all very wrong.
Well, I think we have the man on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And there's a bit of a snapshot introduction. Dr. Cam McDonald is a leader, educator, scientist, motivator, and father, and is currently the CEO of Precision Health Alliance, a world-leading organization focusing on the education of health professionals in the use of precision health. The organization's mission is to eliminate chronic disease and pain by 2050, having health and resilience as the norm. He's also known to me as the other guy, because we often end up presenting at the same conferences, and I'm like, who's the other guy in the other room where all the people are? And it's usually Cam, and I think we've been destined to do this podcast for a long time, but he is well qualified as an exercise physiologist, a dietitian, has a PhD, and a whole lot of other information that we are going to unpack. So welcome to the show today, Cam.
Thanks, Ish. Thanks, Sacha. It's great to be here with you guys. It's awesome.
And it's good to have you in your car, which is quite good for our show because Sacha is often in her car recording. So I know you are busy getting stuff done.
Yeah, it's about to pick up my boys for the weekend. So it's just parked right outside the house, so there's no delay in getting them. It's good fun.
Oh, good man. Well, maybe give us a little bit of your background. Like, how did you get into this field of, epigenetics and human performance? And yeah, give us the rundown starting where you like.
Pretty much third year uni it was. Like I thought that I would definitely get into sports because I love sports. And so I did sports and exercise science at uni because there wasn't anything else that had sports in the title and I wasn't very good at marketing. So I jumped into that and then partied for a couple of years. And then third year I had a really profound lecturer who was talking about exercise and how it can improve diabetes. And I said, how is everybody not doing this? Why is everybody not exercising? This makes no sense. So I was on a mission. I'm just going to fix this stuff up. We're going to get everyone moving. We're going to fix this diabetes problem. So I then went and studied in dietetics and nutrition because I figured I'd need to know a little bit about food if I'm going to really solve this diabetes problem globally. And then got out into hospital work, turned the cardiac ward. We had a 15-minute cardiac talk once a week to the inpatients there. I turned that into an hour and a half lecture just so that they really remembered everything that they could out of it. I just really wanted them to never come back. And I progressed that into some research, got out into private practice. But where it changed for me was during my PhD, I was doing it on omega-3 and exercise and nutrition. And I found out just all of the links between brain and body, particularly through omega-3. It's involved in so much stuff. So that got me really interested in the mental game. So, how can we improve mental function and mental performance? And I got really into that. And then as I was in private practice, I just realized that everybody was getting different results even though I was doing some really structured intervention and I had all of these varied responses, and I was thinking, what's going on here? So I started looking into genetics, started looking into, as it just turns out, the first day that I decided to go investigate some genetics, I get on the phone to somebody. The next meeting that I had was I was interviewing to put my sports dietitian into a clinic, and it turned out the clinic owner was the head of PH360 Cheyne, which is this now global organization in epigenetics, the first ever platform in epigenetics that was made available. And from that moment, that was a decade ago now, I just said, whatever you guys are doing, I am in, because it was truly about how are people different? How does that influence the things that your body needs to be in its best state? And it just solved all of my problems. I had people, doing 20 weeks of intervention and still weren't feeling more fresh, still feeling more sluggish. They might have lost a few kilos, but they just weren't feeling fit. They weren't feeling strong. And I thought I was doing everything. And I just realized that I just had it backwards for them, but I had it exactly right for another person. And it just really highlighted just how different we are, not just physically, but mentally as well. And as a result, we need to talk differently to people. We need to manage our workload in different ways. We need to exercise our body and nourish ourselves in different ways. But that's still, there's so much industry global resistance to this idea that we're different. If you talk to someone genuine and say we're different, oh yeah, I know we're different, but no one really takes action on it. It's really interesting where we're at. And so we've just been pushing as hard as we can for the last decade in that space. And it's been absolutely phenomenal working with some of the brightest minds and really seeing some great results.
So Cam, what actually is epigenetics?
So epigenetics literally means on or around the genes. So you've got your genetic code, and the stuff that sits on or around your genes changes the formation of those genes and then determines which one will be read. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that you've got a diabetes gene and you're running all the time, you're eating really good food. What happens to the formation of the DNA is it curls up in such a way that it protects the diabetes gene from expressing. But then if you sit down and eat lots of stuff that you're not supposed to and experience lots of stress in your life, the DNA unravels, and now that diabetes gene can be read and expressed. And so epigenetics is the way that things change around the genetic code that alter what genes are expressed. And so when we're talking about, mental performance at work, you might have, you might need lots of dopamine to get lots of work done. And if you've got certain influences in your genetic pathways that are decreasing the amount of dopamine you can produce, it changes your motivation, for example. So it works in different ways, but it's a really interesting space. Yeah, it explains all the stuff that changes about us. It's rather than just what's static.
So does that mean that some people just have a genetic predisposition to certain illnesses, or is it more than just illness? Is it predisposition to certain traits as well?
So essentially, yes, people definitely do have genetic predispositions to disease. There's some individuals that are much, much more likely, their lifetime risk based on their genes, to get diabetes, much more likely to have hypercholesterolemia, much more likely to have certain types of cancers. We look at, the BRCA genes that people essentially remove their breast tissue as a result of having that gene. There is definitely a higher risk for certain genes, but then also your environment can alter that. And so this is where you can have a low risk for diabetes, but if you push yourself hard enough, you can find it. But then there's some bodies that naturally their first mode of stress management is more insulin resistance. So we have these predispositions, but then most people can have most conditions, but then there's some that are very genetically determined.
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-minute presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-minute presenter program. And does that then get emphasised or more likely to happen based on lifestyle?
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of how unique we are, because I've been reading a bit about some of the paradox and the ideas around epigenetics. So if you end up saying there's 7 billion of us on the planet and everybody is unique,
Yes.
there is just but one, then all your sample sizes are n equals 1, and so all of the testing and research that we would normally do to establish efficacy of drugs and all that kind of stuff, you end up having this paradox where we're less likely to treat people if you are 1 in 7 billion. So in what you know so far, are there broad categories that people fall into based on their genetic predisposition and their epigenetics, or are we truly unique?
Very good. So it's both of those. We are truly unique in that if you've got a twin with the same genes as you, even if you hang out holding hands your whole life, experiencing the same things, wearing the same clothes, the fact that one of you is holding their left hand and the other one's holding their right will change your brain. And so they will still have phenotype differences, or they'll still have differences in the way that their genes are expressed because they've just been slightly at different angles their whole life. So we are truly unique, even with the same genes. That's the first thing. But what we do to support the education of this information and even to inform clinical application as well, we look at the way that an individual has developed in embryological stages, and that has a lasting effect on the rest of our life. So how we develop in the womb actually sets a trajectory for how we're going to develop. And we've got 6 main groups where people have a similar embryological development. And this means that they are going to have similar musculoskeletal issues, similar dietary needs, but not the same, but similar behavioral tendencies and individuals have differences, but we have, even similar responses to the environment. So we can cluster these individuals into 6 very clear phenotype-based groups that help us understand what happened in the womb, how has this influenced their growth and development throughout life. This relates to the way their organs develop and a whole lot of different things. And this is very, very useful because when we're talking about workplace, it's just like a Myers-Briggs or a HDMI. We're actually understanding this, but we're not just understanding their mind, we actually understand their body as well. And this is where those tools, they don't actually discover, oh, does this person actually need food? And their whole personality changes. Some people are genuinely hungry, and that's a whole group of individuals, and it can change the stress that they're under at any one point in time. Whereas another individual from another group, they actually don't ever get hungry, but if they're stressed, they crave foods, and they don't get agitated if they're hungry. They just get steady and calmer. So the 6 groups, we call them health types, relates to embryological development, and this allows us to then, make the first separation. And this exactly where we're talking about where diseases come from, how we might treat those diseases, the target of treatment, that short circuits that one. And then the technology that we're working on right now will then short circuit it for the individual as well. All of the research that we've done so far is still valid because it speaks to principles of physiology that work within our body, but not all of those principles are valid for every single person, but they are valid for some. And so it's about understanding this fasting thing of making people fast every day is really valid for some people, but some people turn into dust in a few days if they're fasting for too long. So this is just where everything that we see in the literature is valid for certain people, and it's understanding who it's for. That's what we're doing. That's what we specialize in.
Cam, do you share what those 6 phenotypes are, or is that your secret sauce? So can you tell us, do they have cutesy names?
They do. Yep.
Really all I want to know is, what am I?
I need to have a look at your full body, Sacha, and maybe a few little details, and I might be able to give you some details on that.
Oh, well, give us the 6. Let me unselfishly ask for the 6.
So, generally we assess this with some very specific measures of bones and girths and things that we've been developing for the last 20 years, essentially comparing those to genetics and hormones and things like that. But we're going to do an eyeball test on Sacha today. The 6 types, and this is due to their differences in how they develop. We have the activator first. The activator they've actually got more adrenaline, and they have a little bit more sensitivity to sex hormones. That makes them high intensity, competitive, direct individuals. They love HIIT training. We find that they've got an early bird chronotype. They do really well with morning work and morning exercise. They thrive with that, and they get really, really hangry if they don't eat regularly. The way to think about it is they're like a body like a gymnast, shorter, muscular, can do flips and good biomechanics for lifting stuff. So that's the activator. Then we have the guardian. The guardian is a health type that has got a much bigger body. They're the strongest and biggest body. And that is, they have more growth factors like IGF-1, growth hormone. they release more insulin, and so their whole life, they're just bigger. If you look at the Māori population, if you look at the Pacific Island population, there's a lot more guardians in that population. They're bigger, and also they've got more prolactin. Prolactin makes you want to nurture people, and it makes you want to nurture your family and be very protective of your family. And so what we end up with is a whole population in the Pacific Islands where it is completely family oriented, because they have a preponderance of individuals with family-oriented hormones. It's very, very interesting. So they're very nurturing, very caring. We also know that they do better with fasting. We know their predisposition for type 2 diabetes is there. We know that they're very, very strong, and they've got an incredible endurance, but it's a slow, steady endurance. So they are a very different body altogether, but they're the strongest and the most physically resilient. We then have down the bottom, so it's on a 360-degree chart, and we have activators are top left, guardians are top right, and then the bottom in the middle is the sensor. The sensors are the most delicate people that you can come across. They're the ballerina, they've got very little fat and muscle, and they're very cold all of the time. And they develop with a more dominant nervous system. So they're processing everything through their nervous system. So they're very alert, very attentive, their brain's working a million miles an hour all of the time. They're the typical skinny person with a sore stomach because they've got a weaker digestive system. They've actually got less hydrochloric acid production, so they don't break things down as easily. So this leads to a sore stomach, a really, really busy brain. They're very sensitive to noise. They're properly introverted in that they really recharge by themselves. And they need lots and lots of carbohydrates. They do better in nice, warm Bikram yoga rooms. They do well in endurance, like race walking, even long distance running, because they've just got that light frame. Rock climbing, very, very good. If you've seen any of the latest Netflix docos on the rock climbers, they're all sensors and crusaders. They're light, muscled people that can move against gravity very easily, not made for the guardians. Guardians up a wall they're going to pull the wall down, and that's what they're built for. We then have the crusader. Ish is a crusader from what I remember. Crusaders are very dopamine driven. They're the typical triathlete, marathon runner.
Everything about Ish screams triathlete, so you're so on the money.
Yes, exactly. That's what I thought too. He's got an incredible capacity in waiting, by the sound of that comment. So with that brain, what we see is hyper-driven. So they're very driven, very focused, blinkers on. This is the way that I'm going. This is what I'm going to work my 70 hours. Then I'm going to jump on my really sweet bike and go for a 5-hour ride through the mountains with my Garmin watch and track all of the data and make sure that all of the data stacks up and my wattage improves. And people saw me on my bike and I've got the latest gear. Like there's a status element that comes into being a crusader. They need more carbohydrates, more regular meals. They do really well in endurance and high speed endurance. But they get very rigid in their mind and in their body. They get stiff and rigid. So they can be very narrow in their thinking. This isn't Ish, by the way. This is other crusaders generally. And they're very sure of themselves. They really like to think that they've thought about it the right way. So this is a person that's going to naturally climb the ladder in a corporate setting. And they're going to want to have equity or run the business, one of the two. It's very important to them. So we then have the connector. The connector is like a little Lego man. They've got square or heart-shaped face, square body. They're shorter. They're like the typical CrossFit male winner. So if you look at Matt Fraser, Rick Froning, those legends of CrossFit, they're perfect little connectors. And if you want to get a depiction of what a connector is, you just watch the first 5 minutes of the Lego movie where everything is awesome. As long as we're all together, they're really connected to all of the people around them. So I want to know how you're feeling. I want to make sure we're connected. I'm going to look at your face. I can predict your emotions from your facial expressions. Nothing has to have lots of purpose. It just has to have connection. And so they're very much about, is there a friend that I've got, that my best friend? And can I meet 7,000 people today? Because that would be really wonderful. So they really energize off people. And that's the opposite of sensor. They're the extrovert. And their brain is virtually empty when there's no one in the room, when we look at the EEG. And then someone walks into the room and it lights up. Whereas an introvert, technically, they're in the room, their brain's already fizzing along. And then as soon as someone walks in the room, they start getting more tired. So the final one is the diplomat. This is very similar to the New Zealand culture, I would say. It's steady, considered, thoughtful, and it's all about how can I complete things. So I want to be able to complete something. It's driven from a serotonin requirement. And they generally have taller, thicker bodies, like the glamazons, those Amazon women that are just tall and strong. That's the typical diplomat. Same with the men as well. And they like to take their time in the morning. They're more night owl. They like to really take their time to consider and think about things. They like order and structure, and they really like to finish things because it gives them serotonin, whereas activators like to start things because they're really adrenaline. So in a work setting, you've got the activator that is, let's just go and start everything, and there's a new project, I'll get on that, no problem. And then you've got the diplomat that's just like, whoa, why all this change? Why didn't I get written notice with 4 weeks? And let me just process all of this information first. And that can create quite a bit of tension, particularly when you've got an early morning meeting with the activator, and it's an early morning meeting for the diplomat who's a night owl as well. And this is both the diplomats and the guardians. We find that if you stress them significantly in the morning, it can worsen their energy levels throughout the day. It can actually make them hold a bit of fat around their stomach as well. And this is a very typical story. The diplomats and guardians will be exercising really hard. They'll be doing all of the work that they can. And because they're working really hard in the morning, it sets off this stress signal for the rest of the day that actually holds weight and fluid on. Whereas the early birds, they wake up first thing in the morning and they're crushing it, and everyone puts them up and says, we're going to be like them. And this is where we have a whole lot of trouble, particularly in Australia. We've got an early bird culture, and we have these night owls that form, it's almost a majority of our population. And they've got this thing called social jet lag because of that. And they're just behind, and giving them permission to actually have a slower morning actually makes a big difference. So I always try and support the night owls when I'm doing talks like this, because no one really recognizes them. Because if you look on Google, how do I do better as a night owl? All you see is how to get up at 5 a.m. and drink coffee like a legend and burn yourself out. So I like to just honor the night owls in the crowd to make sure they're feeling supported. That's the 6.
So amazing. Yeah. I don't exist. So wow, this is exciting. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm reasonably confident that I'm the little Lego square man. Do you think I'm the Lego square man?
You've got a Lego square man face. Yep. But it all depends. How tall are you?
5'2".
Oh yeah. Well, that's more Lego manish. They're very short, these Lego men.
I might have been activated, but then you said something about them liking HIT, and I'm like, oh no.
Well, they're right next to each other, activators and connectors. There's some crossover there. But probably the big one is, just as a tip, Sacha, it's very important that you're verbally processing your thoughts. That's the most important thing.
Yes, so what does that make me? Because that's me, I can't.
Yeah, it's connector.
I don't know what I think until I hear what I've said.
Exactly, that's so important, yeah. And what you don't need anybody to fix it, you just need to have it heard. And that's really important.
Yeah, so the bit that I heard you say was that I'm Rick from CrossFit. Is that correct?
Rick Froning, yes.
It's been a great interview.
Exactly.
I don't know that we need any more. I think we're done. I've got what I need.
I prefer him over Matt Fraser as well. So you picked the right one there. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And Ish, what are you, mate? You're a crusader, are you?
Yeah, I think I'm a crusader, although there's aspects of others I think I probably sit quite close to. And so that's quite interesting, because I think you're obviously predominantly something, but probably like everybody's unique, right? So we might have traits and aspects of other things. But what I find helpful with that, and I love the way that you've kind of acknowledged the fact that we have an early bird culture. So all our work environments are often based around, this 9 till 5, but earlier to get in. And I know at work we've got people that they stay there till 7, 8 at night, and I'm like going, how are you doing that? Whereas I'm like in at 5:30, 6 o'clock, I've got stuff done, but both performing at high levels, but in completely different ways.
Totally, 100%. And I would say that the night owls are judged, not the early birds. It's really interesting. Like even in the literature, because night owls, the guardians and diplomats have a higher BMI naturally, healthfully they have a higher BMI. And because we have such a cultural problem with BMI, everyone says, if you're a night owl, you've got a high BMI, there's something wrong with you. But in fact, they're part of the group that are healthy obese. 30% of the people who are obese are healthy and obese, and they've just got a night owl phase. And what happens is that when they wake up early, it sends their cortisol up for about 4 hours, much higher than it wants to be. And it dysregulates their blood sugar levels for that same amount of time as well. And so they end up in the afternoon just crashing and burning. They then get a second wind, and then they absolutely drop dead at 8 p.m. at night. And they think, I'm an early bird because I need to go to bed like before the kids, But what happens is if they don't stress themselves, they just wake up and they do some calm activities, even if they're answering emails, but just doing it calmly. They prepare things better the night before. and they drink plenty of fluid first thing in the morning, and just 2-3 hours after they wake up, that's when they start hitting their stride. All of a sudden, the whole afternoon opens up, because they're cognitively, we know that their best cognitive time is between 2 and 10 p.m. at night, and they'll get their best productivity done in that time. And, you know, for school kids, job's done by 2 p.m. Everyone has checked out. And so this is the really fascinating thing, even with understanding, because this happens in kids too. Working with an elite athlete, one of the national reps for our hockey team over in Australia, she's just changed her study time to nighttime, and is just, her uni is going through the roof. And she also now knows how to manage that early morning exercise, just like our night owls learn how to manage the early morning meeting. It's like, be really well prepared and expect a lot less of yourself, rather than put a whole lot of pressure on yourself, and just know that the early birds are going to be jumping all over the spot and wanting to change the world, and they will calm down. And by the afternoon, you'll be able to figure out what they meant, and you'll be able to give them good feedback. So it's just that level of permission to be who you are. That's a big part of our message, that we want people to feel seen, heard, understood, and supported, to really be living the way that aligns with them. But we haven't been able to do that because we haven't been able to measure this at scale so successfully. So in that way, it's been really powerful.
So one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about at the moment is, obviously when I hear you talk about the different types of people, there's ones that I kind of naturally think, oh, I might be that, or I might be this. But to your point before, there's probably some dangers in self-diagnosing and kind of go, well, I love getting up early, but it might just be that I've forced myself to get into that pattern, and it's actually working against my body type and my personality type and my epigenetics. So what are some of the ways that someone could actually maybe profile themselves, or is there a test that you guys do online that you can promote that we can go and have a look at?
The best way to do it is with the Shae.ai website, SHAE.ai. You just jump on there, or even just ph360.me, ph360.me. Both of those places will get you to a place where you can look at the platform, and there's really simple, like a 10-day starter pack that you can do that's very, very affordable. And that is definitely the importance of assessment is so critical, because we get taught from very young age, just do what the person is doing in front of you. You know, this is the way that this person has gone to lead. This is the way this person's been successful. You've got to do it that way too. And as a result, we end up at work trying to emulate the people around us that are completely different, and it can be really dysfunctional for our brain. And if we just do it the way that's right for us, we go way better. Even, you know, there might be a leader who does what you're doing, is wakes up really early, gets really structured, has this particular way of managing their notes and their orders and all of that sort of stuff. But that just flies in the face of another person who actually needs just like a bit of paper and a notepad, and they need to sketch out a mind map because their brain's more visual, and the way that they go about their work is much more feeling oriented than logically oriented. And just having that understanding can allow you just to take charge of the way that you do things for you, rather than just the way you think you need to do them in alignment with everybody else.
So I'm fascinated by this idea of the embryonic environment, because we can think about how some of us are so different from our brothers and sisters, or also as parents. So I'm thinking, as a mother, you know, I've carried 2 children to term, and I've got a boy and a girl, and they're so different. So that's fascinating too. Like, we're not just the same as our siblings.
Yep. So there's a really important thing in development. There's 3 layers of what's called the embryo. And the embryo is developing all of the organs that you're going to have. Obviously, it is the smaller version of you. And in each of those layers are different organs. And depending on which layer gets turned on by the genes during development, or which 2 layers get turned on more or less, that alters the amount of fuel that those layers receive. That alters then how dominant and how big those organs become, and how influential they are. Even the hormones that they're sensitive to are related to those different organs as well. And so, for example, the nervous system is found in what's called the ectoderm, but the musculoskeletal tissues and the muscle, fat, and bone are found in the mesoderm. And what we know about the genetics is that if you turn on your ectodermic genes, so that means if you're developing your nervous system more, you turn off your mesodermic tissues, or they develop less. And so what we end up with is a person that's very cerebral. They think a lot, and they've got a fine body with not as much muscle and fat and bone, but their nervous system is well developed and is very, very fast. Whereas a person with a high musculoskeletal or mesodermic development, they will receive the development of their muscles, their bones, their fat, their adrenal glands, sex organs, and less comparatively of their nervous system. And so they'll be more impulsive. They'll be more body first, mind second, whereas the first person will be more mind first, body second. So even with twins, we have twins that have different health types because when their embryos separated, they actually got a different amount of fuel, which changed the environment, which changed the way that genes expressed. And you can have two twins that actually have different health types, even though they're incredibly genetically similar. So it's very, very common to have a whole mixture of kids and health types in the family when you've got multiples. There are some genetic influences that make it likely for some individuals to be more prone to have certain types of kids, but generally it's open season and anyone can have any kind. And this is why sometimes parenting can be so difficult, because you're literally parenting a child that is polar opposite to you and you have no idea. You just expect that they'll do the things that you do and go through the experiences that you go through, and they are having a completely different experience. And this is, we have a parenting course. We can profile children from 2 years and up now, so we can actually understand what is your little alien made of and why do they behave the way that they do. And it can give you incredible clarity in the family and the home. Just a simple example, early bird parents and a night owl child. They're up at the crack of dawn. Let's do this. Let's go. And this child just will not get out of bed, is really slow in the morning. And they end up judging the child to say, come on, you've just got to be better at this. They find out about this lens, and all of a sudden now they're just letting them be, and they are a much, much happier kid. They're actually doing better at school. They're exercising better. They're eating better, all because they're not so stressed in the morning. And this is, from loving, supportive parents. They're just putting their bias onto how their child should be. And this takes a while to unwind that lens. We just assume our kids are going to be like us, and it's just not the case.
Oh man, that just cracks me up, because my brother's staying with us at the moment, and we were talking about when we were younger, and because my family always kind of went to bed quite early, and I've always been early to bed, but he used to be up late, just walking around the house as a little guy, just walking around, checking stuff out, reading books, wouldn't go to bed till after midnight, and then he would never get up in the morning. We could never figure it out, but it was because he didn't go to bed till so late. But even now, he's still such a night owl. But that's just fascinating, Cam. That is really interesting.
Yeah. It can solve so many disputes. Like, we've got night owl and early bird partners, and now the early bird gets up, goes to their run guilt-free, doesn't try and hassle the other person to get out of bed. But then when they get back from their run or whatever, they bring them a cup of tea and allow them to have a nice cup of tea in bed to really enjoy their night owl status. And then when they want to go to bed early, the night owl goes, no worries, go to bed, and then they continue on with their night, and everyone's happy. Like that. But before, it's like, no, we've got to do things together, otherwise we're not a good couple, and you end up just ruining each other. Like, it's so fascinating, just understanding that little balance. Yeah.
I love the idea of the importance of working with your genetic predispositions, but also understanding what can influence them. So not allowing some of those bad genes, if you like, to express, and what we can do health-wise around that. And I feel concerned about an element of predeterminism, where people go, oh, that's just my genes. There's nothing I can do. I'm just wired like that. And I have a kind of a fundamental belief that the size of our brains mean there are some things that we might be genetically predisposed to, but that doesn't actually serve us in terms of who we want to be. So, what's your commentary around that?
Yeah. So this is a really important topic of that whole thing of self-determinism, and then also, biology, our fate being in our genes, essentially. And so just broadly as a topic, just to start with, what's most important about this is that in this world where everyone is equal, we are definitely not equal. And that is, no one is the same. We have different bodies that have different capacities. Like, you look at Usain Bolt, if we were to really try to hone his shot putting skills, he wouldn't have been anywhere near the athlete that he is than if he went for sprinting, because he has a genetic and a phenotype capacity to be a great sprinter. If you look at Eddie Hall, who's like was the world's strongest man, had the biggest deadlift for a long time, if not still right now, he has a capacity for strength. And if you load him up with calories and you load him up with weight, he gets stronger and stronger and stronger. You then look at a marathon runner You would never see them be able to become the world's strongest man. And so, of course, they can try. But what we're talking about with genetics and also phenotype is it firstly speaks to the capacity that you have. If it just so happens that you have more adrenaline release and you're more sensitive to sex steroids, you're going to be more fiery, more intense, and more competitive without even thinking about it. So the important thing is that there is a part of your biology that responds in a certain way that essentially creates who you are in a way. Like, it definitely creates how you identify with yourself in many ways. And everybody has a particular capacity that is their own. And not everyone has the same capacity. Therefore, we can't all be good at everything. And so there is a determinism in our capacity in some instances. Then when it comes to intelligence, it's not necessarily related to the health types per se. There's a whole lot of other factors that are involved in that. You'll have some individuals that will thrive far better at school because they love rules, they love progress, they love being able to just track and tick things off a list, and they enjoy sitting quietly and doing their work, and they like doing their art tasks. And that's often how we rank intelligence sort of in the real world. Obviously, we've got IQ tests and things like that. But then you've got body awareness as an intelligence, and someone who's developed out of their musculoskeletal tissues. They've got greater proprioception. They know how to move their body really well. They know how to get into action. They know how to fail forward fast, and they know how to break rules all of the time. There's an innovation intelligence, which is part of their capacity. Whereas we have another person that has incredible nurturing capacity. They've just got, it's built into their biology to naturally care for the people around them. And so they will have this great ability naturally to be more oriented to others, and they'll be more understanding of others and more compassionate of others. So this is part of our capacity. And then, of course, we can learn whatever we want on top of that. But the whole point of what we're talking about is if you know who you are and you know what you're awesome at, then you can do anything. So, for example, I'm a crusader, and I like structure, I like rigidity, I like purpose, I like making sure that if we do something, it's got an outcome. My kids are both connectors, and connectors are not into outcomes at all. They are into fun, variety, and chatting, and making sure that everyone's having a good time. There is no purpose. It's just be. And so what I know now that I'm a crusader is that I have to write a list of rules for myself and say, right, what am I going to be for my boys today? I'm going to be fun, and I'm going to be purposeless. I'm going to change it up. And I'm going to be social, and I'm not going to worry about making sure they progress with their swimming or their soccer kick, because that's not important to them. But I'm using my crusader checklist to deliver that fun. And this is where, if you know yourself, instead of just trying to be my boys to try and fit in with them, I can be myself, but I can be a version of myself or use my strengths of structure and things like that to support them in what they need as well.
But ultimately, it's important that they learn to swim, right?
It is important that they learn to swim. However, my boys learn to swim just through play, not through me saying, okay, you did that well, now this is the next progression. That's how my brain likes to learn. But essentially, all I've done with my boys, now that I've found out they're connectors, I literally throw them into the water and I throw them up and down, and then I throw them over to the other side of the pool and they figure it out. And I'm not asking them to progress. I'm just actively having fun, and they just get there. As soon as I go into, hey, this is what we're going to do next, they just go, I'm out. Like they're not engaged anymore because it's not fun, and therefore they don't learn how to swim. So the boys are 9 and 3. So they're still at that age where it's very implicit. If I just provide the right environment, they do really, really well. But yes, they're going to be super fun and super exciting when they're a little bit older too.
Oh, mate, that has been absolutely mind-blowing and eye-opening. I've talked to you before about this, but I hadn't heard it on that level, and it's been so cool seeing even the change from the way that you're assessing these personality types and body types and epigenetics and starting to see the evidence come through. If our listeners are interested in getting more information on this, like maybe doing the profiling, obviously we've talked about that website before, but how can they follow you, or how can they get more information on this that would be helpful for them?
Probably the best place to go, because we've got a whole ecosystem of different things that they can do, whether it be corporate, gyms, parenting, learning for schools, general population, health professional learning as well. So that whole ecosystem is found at this website, ph360, ph360.me/tech for good. but the 4 is a number 4. So TECH 4, good. And that will essentially take you to a landing page with all of the various bits and bobs. And depending on your interest levels, you can go to the website that essentially directs you to do the profiling for the family, or to get in touch with a corporate representative, or to do some health professional training, whatever it might be. So Dr Cam McDonald is pretty much on my socials, whether it be Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook. Like it's all there on Dr Cam McDonald. That'd be the best ways to stay in touch.
Cool. Well, I will put all those links in our show notes. Feel free, if you're listening, to scroll down, click through. Dr. Cam, it has been awesome. I have really enjoyed it talking to you. I've enjoyed watching you over your career develop. You're an exceptional speaker. That has been a great session. And thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, thanks so much, Ish. Thanks, Sacha. It's been really great to be with you both.
Thanks, Cam. And I'm so excited that I'm a Lego man. Everything is awesome. Woo!